What's up guys, my name's Brandon and today we're going to be talking all about the iPhone SE 2. We're going to be talking rumors, we're going to be talking my predictions, and also why I think the iPhone SE 2 could be a big win, a big seller for Apple if it gets released in 2019. So the iPhone SE was released back in March of 2016, and I actually just purchased one here in 2019 and made a video on it. But man, I was super impressed with the iPhone SE, the speed, and just really how much different it was than any other iPhone. And I do realize that the SE in iPhone SE stands for special edition, and that could indicate that this is kind of just a one-time production run for Apple. But I wouldn't be so quick to jump to that conclusion because we all know that Apple isn't really doing too well lately, and they're really starting to focus a lot on budget products. They know that people are less and less likely to buy $1,000 phones now, and even if they do, they're not going to upgrade as often as they have in years past. So if we combine the fact that Apple is coming off its worst holiday season in a decade, and also that customers are becoming less and less likely to upgrade with prices being so high, this makes way for a picture-perfect entrance for the iPhone SE 2. And not to mention that, again, Apple is on a tear with budget products lately. I mean, first we had the iPhone XR, which, you may say it's not a budget phone, but it was for Apple. Then we have the iPad mini refresh coming next month at Apple's spring event. We have the iPod Touch 7th generation, which is rumored to be coming this year as well. Another refresh that hasn't happened in years. So why can't the iPhone SE also get a refresh? It hasn't been refreshed in years. It's also a budget product. So it would just make sense, and it goes in line with everything that Apple is doing in 2019. Now we have had tons of leaks and rumors about the iPhone SE 2 dating all the way back to 2017, but as of late there really hasn't been a lot of leaks or rumors or really any talk about the iPhone SE 2, and it's kind of confusing. But then again, it could also be Apple really making sure none of these leaks get out there. They're really trying to keep this, low key and keep it as a surprise release. So it's still possible that we could see this next month. Just because we don't have leaks and rumors does not entirely mean that it's not coming. And I do think that Apple's recent iPhone SE clearance sale, where they sold iPhone SEs on apple.com for a discount, was more than just a random clearance sale of iPhone SEs. I think that Apple was actually running a test here. I think it was a very smart public demand test to see how much people would buy such an old device, such a outdated looking device in 2019. In the age of home buttonless iPhones, how many people would buy a 3-year-old device with a home button and with a headphone jack still? And I think they were really surprised and really blown away with the amount of people that bought these, because these things sold really quick on apple.com every single time they went up. And again, the fact that these sold so well with the bezels, with the home button, with the headphone jack, with the small display, really tells Apple that the demand is still there for a phone like this. And I do think that Apple will include both a headphone jack and also a home button on the iPhone SE 2 when it does get released. I don't think there's going to be an edge-to-edge display. I do think there's still going to be some bezels on the display, but it may not be as, pronounced as the bezels on the original iPhone SE. They may be a little bit less, maybe a little bit smaller bezels on both the top and the bottom. Now, I do think that we could have a software-based home button like we have on the iPhone 7 and the iPhone 8 on the iPhone SE 2 instead of the mechanical physical home button that we have on the original iPhone SE. That would really only make sense, as well as second generation Touch ID as opposed to first generation that we found on the iPhone SE. And of course, I do also think that we're going to have a headphone jack as well, because we do have a home button. And also, I think it's just going to be there just to have a product with a headphone jack. I mean, I don't know for sure if they're going to do that. It's really hard to tell. But Samsung is probably going to be doing it with the S10. I'm not saying Apple's going to copy them or anything, but I would not be too surprised if they did also keep the headphone jack there, even though it's going to be released in 2019. And I really just think that these things are going to be there as well, just to keep the original form factor, just to make it look very similar to the original iPhone SE as well. Now, do I think that the iPhone SE 2 will have a full edge-to-edge display? No, I don't think there's any possible way that Apple would put an edge-to-edge display on a product like the iPhone SE 2, especially since the iPhone XR exists. And it's not even just that the iPhone XR exists, it's the fact that the XR exists as a budget option, a step down from the flagship models. I think that we could see a bigger display and maybe smaller bezels, but I think that we will still have the home button there. And I don't think the display is going to be that much bigger than it was on the original SE. I just think that the iPhone XR is just not small enough for a lot of people still. And it's definitely not cheap enough for a lot of people out there. Now, a Chinese report did claim that the iPhone SE 2 will have a similar design to the current iPhone SE, but it will have a larger 4.2-inch display. Now, I could see the iPhone SE 2 having a 4.2-inch display, but I could also see it being a little bit bigger, maybe like 4.7 inches like the iPhone 6 was. Now, as for the internals and the performance of the iPhone SE 2, I would expect it to have Apple's A12 Bionic chip, which is the same chipset found in the iPhone XS, XS Max, and the iPhone XR. This would just go go in line with the original iPhone SE, which had the internals of that year's flagship models, the 6S and the 6S Plus. So it would not be surprising to see the SE2 with the internals of the 2018 iPhones. Now, the battery life was a big selling point for the iPhone SE back in 2016. It had the best battery life of any iPhone. So I think that in 2019, they're just going to have to improve the battery size just a little bit, maybe not too much, but the fact that we are in 2019 means that you probably will need a slightly bigger battery. So we may go from 1640 milliamp hours to maybe 1700 or 1800 milliamp hours. I think that would be sufficient enough. And I think we'd be in line for another great battery life iPhone, even better than the iPhone XR. We could also see a better camera on the iPhone SE2. I think we would have to have some kind of improvement to the camera, maybe not much. We'll probably still have a 12 megapixel camera, maybe the same camera that we have on the iPhone XR. I do think it's going to be a single lens. I don't think we could have any kind of dual, or of course not a triple lens on the SE2. And I would imagine that the camera on the SE2 would now support 4K 60 as opposed to 4K 30 like the original could. Now, of course, a lot of people have speculated that the iPhone XR is the iPhone SE replacement and that we're never going to see an iPhone SE2. Apple's just going to continue with the iPhone XR model, but I don't think that's entirely true. I mean, most of the leaks and rumors that did come out about the iPhone SE2 did actually end up being the iPhone XR when it was released. So a lot of people were confused, but there were still some leaks out there that did indicate that an iPhone SE2 was in the works. So I'm not really sure what Apple is doing or if they've just not started production yet on the iPhone SE2. It's really hard to tell at this point because, again, there haven't really been a ton of leaks or rumors in 2019 just yet. But even if the iPhone XR is supposedly the iPhone SE replacement, still 6.1 inches is too big of a screen for some people. And again, that $750 price tag is also too much for some people. I think there's still a market for a smaller phone like an iPhone SE2 at a cheaper price point, you know, with maybe the older look to it. I think that would still sell like hotcakes in 2019. I just think that it would be a huge success even if they only change very, very few things. I mean, maybe just make a slightly bigger screen, you know, better internals and maybe a slightly better camera, and it would sell like crazy only if the price is right. So the original iPhone SE started out at $399 for a 16 gig model and then went up to $499 for the 64 gigabyte variant. But of course, it's 2019 now, and we know that Apple is not going to sell any iPhone with only 16 gigabytes of storage, and I don't even think they'd sell something with 32 gigabytes of storage. So my money is on a 64 gigabyte base model of the iPhone SE2. And I would say that the 64 gig model would need to be $499 and then go up to maybe $128 or $256 for $599. I think $500 is the perfect price for the iPhone SE2 in 2019. I think that $250 difference between the SE2 and the iPhone XR is justified. It's just enough so that you can't really compare the two because the iPhone XR is going to have that big display. It's not going to have a home button. It's not going to have a headphone jack. And then you're going to, you know, pay $250 less for a phone that does have a home button and doesn't have that great display, doesn't have, you know, the headphone jack and things like that. So I think it's a really good price to have the iPhone SE2. And again, it's a good price because it's $250 less, but it's not going to take away from the sales of the iPhone XR because there's still going to be people out there that want that big screen and do not want a home button. They want to use Face ID and things like that. Now, like I did mention earlier, there have been a ton of leaks and rumors about the iPhone SE2, and there were especially a lot of them in 2018, but a lot of them had conflicting information, and the reason for that is because at the time, which was May 2018, production had not even begun yet for the supposed iPhone SE2. And since we've been running dry on leaks and rumors for the iPhone SE2, that means that Apple has either not entered production for this phone yet, or they're just keeping everything under wraps really good for a surprise release here in March. I just think that there are too many coincidences for Apple not to sell the iPhone SE2 in 2019. I mean, we had the sporadic iPhone SE clearance sale, we have all these budget products coming out, you know, in late 2018 and into 2019 as well, the iPad mini, the iPod Touch. We have Apple realizing that people aren't upgrading and paying as much for phones anymore, and also the fact that March would be the 3-year anniversary of the iPhone SE. So yeah, all of that combined just makes me think that an iPhone SE2 could actually be releasing here in 2019, but of course everything is pretty much speculative at this point. So yeah, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. I think that the iPhone SE would be an amazing product for Apple to revive and sell here in 2019. If you think so as well, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, and of course make sure to subscribe for a lot more iPhone SE2 leaks and rumors videos. I'm sure there are more coming because I don't think we've heard the end of this product just yet. Also, make sure you guys leave a comment down below for what you would like to see in the iPhone SE2, and also if you ever owned an iPhone SE yourself. But yeah, I'm gonna head out of here, guys. Thanks again for watching the video, and I'll see you soon.